الله بالخير. لعل تعددية الأقطاب فرصة ذهبية لشعوب أمريكا اللاتينية، مستند لمعهد تراي كونتيننتال بعنوان التطلع نحو الصين. تعددية الأقطاب فرصة لشعوب أمريكا اللاتينية، يقارب التحديات العميقة والفرص الكبيرة التي تنتظر دول عالم الجنوب، ولا سيما دول أمريكا اللاتينية، نتيجة التحول الجيوسياسي من الغرب إلى الشرق في ظل عودة ظهور الصين كقوة اقتصادية ولاعب عالمي. كيف تستفيد أمريكا اللاتينية من فرص الاستثمار الصيني والقوة الجيوسياسية الصاعدة للتعددية القطبية؟ ما هو دور أمريكا اللاتينية في هذا العالم الجديد المتعدد الأقطاب؟ وهل هي مفتاح التحول؟ هل تكسب دولها معركة السيادة ضد واشنطن وأذرعها الدولية؟ العالم المالي المتعدد الأقطاب أصبح واقعاً. هل تستطيع الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية النجاة منه؟ البرازيل تقود اليوم الدعوات إلى إحياء اتحاد أوناسور في أمريكا الجنوبية، فهل يعني ذلك تكاملاً أفضل في المنطقة أو ابتعاداً أوسع عن الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية والاتجاه نحو الاكتفاء الذاتي؟ نرحب بكم ونرى ونسمع أكثر من ضيفنا الباحث السياسي البرازيلي رافائيل ماشادو في البعد الأقرب. هذه الميادين وأنا زينب صفار، خليكم ويانا. Rafael Machado, Brazilian political scientist, leader of Nova Resistência or New Resistance Movement, scholar of the fourth political theory. Rafael Machado, salam and welcome to Al Mayadeen. This is the Proximate Aspect. I'm Zainab Al Safar. So good to have you, Rafael.
Salam, Zainab. It's an honor for me to be here. Thank you for listening to me.
Our pleasure. Well, looking towards China, multipolarity as an opportunity for the Latin American people is a report by Tricontinental Institute which discusses how the opportunities provided by China's economic investment and geopolitical power could open up new possibilities, yet new challenges for Latin America and the Caribbean. So we can see, Rafael, that there is not only a call and concrete steps in our part of the world, in our region, in West Asia and the Arab region, to head towards the East, but also in Latin America. Your take, please.
Well, from many decades already, our countries, Latin American and Caribbean countries, have had to deal with the United States and with the collective West in general, and on very unfavorable terms. We remember, for example, the Washington Consensus from the 90s, a time when everyone believed we were at the edge of the end of history, yes, like Fukuyama called it. And our countries, Brazil, for example, made many deals with the United States and with Western countries, and we asked for money. For example, we indebted ourselves with World Bank, IMF, etc. And all these deals were always unfavorable to us. They, for example, the IMF always dealt with us, asking for us to privatize our most important strategic businesses, for example, our steel business, our metallurgical businesses. We had to end, for example, the Petrobras. Petrobras still exists, but we had to sell some of its shares. There was, even for some time, George Soros was owner of Vale, which is one of our biggest enterprises. And of course, with time, they also began to impose on us Western values. So we saw a wave of Americanization.
So it was a kind of, also a kind of cultural war, so to say.
Precisely. This is something that now the West is also begin attacking Africa, Middle East, and other countries with. But in Latin America, it also came a bit before. Only some countries could resist fully to it, like Venezuela, for example, or Ecuador during Correa's tenure, Bolivia with Evo Morales, etc. Even other countries governed by left-wing governments of a more social democratic style, they, in more, in some sense at least, they were more or less seduced by the Sirens song. So and that explains also why they were so fragile to hybrid war from the West. The Brazilian government of the time, Argentinian government, and others more or less fell victim to this seduction strategy.
Let me here try to continue in a similar vein. Currently, we are witnessing a geopolitical transition, as we said, of global hegemony from the West to the East, albeit perhaps not in a hegemonic way, the way it was with the imperialists. But observers said that the United States strategies to advance its vision of unipolarity have been buried under the rubble of a Western world that sought to make the entire planet its dominion. What is Latin America's role, particularly Brazil, where you are, sir, in this new multipolar world?
Well, our intention is for Brazil to become the leader of a pole in one of the poles in this multipolar world. Though there are a lot of challenges in this. As the West begins retreating from the Middle East, from Africa, and even from Eastern Europe in the future, Latin America could remain as a kind of reserve region, a reserve continent for the United States to recover some of its lost resources, lost power. Because the Amazon region, for example, is extremely rich in water resources, in oil resources, in biological resources. There's the Andean region with lithium and other rare materials. There's the Guarani water reserves, that also one of the biggest drinkable water reserves in the planet. So our worry is that they resurrect the Monroe Doctrine, but not anymore directed against Europe as it was in the 19th century, but a new doctrine directed against China and Russia.
Now, although China has prioritized Eurasia as a regional hub in the initial phase of the BRI Belt and Road Initiative, Latin America and the Caribbean have become increasingly important to this initiative. Some might argue, Rafael, that Latin America is the key to the multipolar transition. How far is that accurate? Might you explain it further, sir?
Certainly. I agree that Latin America is the key, or at least one of the major keys for this multipolar transition, precisely because of its main resources. If the United States managed to subdue Latin American and Caribbean governments, to seduce them or subdue them or change them through color revolutions, for example, then maybe the United States could avoid the end of the unipolar moment, of the unipolar world, because it will not be only the North American continent, United States and its Canadian subsidiary, but it will be the Mexican resources, the Caribbean resources, the Brazilian resources, and all others, including our access to Antarctica, for example, where Argentina has a large share of the Antarctica with its many future resources like silver, etc. All of that will be under control of Washington, so they will be able to avoid its fall from grace. So I think that China and Russia should, of course, China is in a better position than Russia right now. They should give a lot of attention to Latin America, not only on trade and investment opportunities, but also on cultural partnerships, social activities, assistance activities, so that we may break the Western imperialistic propaganda about China, which is seen by many people as a menace, and also because Brazil is very fragile. Brazil and other countries here are very fragile to the action of NGOs. I'll give you a concrete example. One of the major projects of China in our countries is to connect the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean with with railways from the Santos port to the other side of the continent, yes, to the Pacific Ocean, probably through Bolivia and Peru, but it wasn't formalized. Everything wasn't absolutely defined. The problem is that NGOs in Brazil, acting through the judiciary system, always block any kind of infrastructure project, using the arguments, using the excuses of environmental concerns, of minority rights concerns, etc. Of course, environment.
Yes, this is where George Soros NGOs jump in.
Precisely. So, for example, they always find a lost tribe that nobody even knew existed. So they use more or less similar strategies like they use with the Uyghur question in China, or the minority questions in Russia, for example. Oh, the Siberians want to secede from Russia,
exactly,
or the Chechenians, etc.
Yes.
So they also are using this in Brazil with our indigenous people.
However, Raphael, although China avoids any kind of diplomatic confrontation with the US, yet Washington's response to China's relations with Latin America and the Caribbean has often been hostile and threatening. Observers say that if the dollar is the beating heart of the American hegemony, Latin America is the ribcage. So whatever happens to the ribcage makes the heart more vulnerable. Don't you believe that the key to the multipolar transition is the opening of the Latin American front, Raphael?
Precisely. I think that Latin America is a battlefield where, after the solution, I hope peaceful solution of the Ukrainian problem, of Taiwan situation, and other problems around the world, this is the battlefield where the United States will understand that they also could have a role to play in a multipolar world as a country, as an important country, as a big country, but one country, one region, one specific civilization among others, among equal civilizations, among civilizations that are as important as they are. Islamic civilization, Chinese civilization, Eurasian, and also Latin American. But last year, they put at their new national security doctrine, which was signed by Joe Biden, they put all the Americas, all the continents, as part of their national security concerns. They didn't specify that we were our own region. So we have been receiving visitors from the United States almost monthly. For example, we just had Victoria Nuland, and where Victoria Nuland goes, bad things happen. We
Of
had
course.
2 months
Yes.
ago, Laura Richardson, which is the general of Southcom, the South Atlantic Command, and she visited dozens of military bases in Brazil.
Hmm.
So this connection between Brazilian military and the United States military is worrying. The George Soros and all the other think tanks throw
Hmm.
millions of dollars every year to all kinds of NGOs, which block all major infrastructure work,
Hmm.
which seed um, uh, political polarization, racial polarization, uh, uh, narratives of civil war, of
True.
fragmentation,
True.
etc.
True. True. Well,
So we actually need China's help. I think China, Russia, Iran, and other countries which are more experienced with fighting hybrid war should pay more attention to Latin America. We actually need their help. We
yes.
need to build bridges among our
Right.
regions.
In this sense, Rafael, currently 21 Latin America and the Caribbean countries have signed cooperation memoranda or agreements with China as part of the BRI. From the standpoint of the Latin American people, what are the political objectives of this deepened connection? How does Latin America benefit from Chinese investment opportunities and the rising geopolitical power of multipolarity? Quickly, if I may.
Certainly. Well, we see from experience that China usually works with win-win situations, win-win deals,
Hmm.
not the kind of zero-sum deals that the Western world usually works with. So they build in Africa, they build schools, they build railways, etc. So we think that they will help us with integration, continental integration, infrastructure, with partnerships in semiconductors, especially because China needs new semiconductors sources, and
Exactly.
they don't ask, for example, for changes in our cultures with the LGBTQ thing and other kinds of changes that the IMF and the World Bank and Davos impose whenever they want to talk to us. So I think that the Brazilian people will be able to keep its specific culture, its specific values, its traditions. At the same time, they learn with how China became such a powerful country.
Right. The potential creation of a new currency for BRICS countries would shift the focus away from the US dollar as the trade transaction currency. This ambitious proposal, together with former Brazilian President Dilma Rousseff's inauguration as the president of the BRICS Bank, promised to be an alternative to the American debt trap you talked about. Do you reckon that this provides an opportunity for the people of Latin America to finally break away from the shackles of imperialism? Is the tide finally turning against imperialism, Rafael?
I think dollar is in its death throes. Of course, the process is slow. We have, for example, in Argentina, a country which, with most of its economy dollarized, some other Central American countries also are extremely dependent on dollar. So we need more options. We need to be able to trade in yuan, in rubles, or in this specific new currency,
Mhm.
which some people even say will be backed by gold, which is very interesting, so that we can precisely put some limits on this philosophy of usury that basically enslave people.
Now, we all know that Brazil is the largest economy and country in South America. It holds considerable regional influence as the leading force behind continental integration. President Lula has an aim of reviving the Union of South American Nations, UNASUR, which would boost cooperation and trade across the region. Is Latin America on the way towards a new type of regional integration or a wider move away from the US and towards a kind of self-sufficiency?
Well, I think that these initiatives are extremely important with the resurrection of UNASUR, and they are fundamental for us to gain some measure of self-sufficiency and actually turn our continent, our civilization into a pole in the future multipolar world order. But we need to we need to be extremely careful with, for example, these offers from the European Union, which is precisely trying to exit from the Chinese economic advances by subduing us to German industry, which is in extreme crisis. So they want us to keep selling only commodities, simple commodities, iron, oil, crude oil, etc., and keep importing European industrial goods. So you need to, but Lula at least is being extremely, he isn't accepting all of it. He's trying to negotiate better terms with these European Union, Mercosur deals. So we need to keep paying attention so that our country actually goes towards self-sufficiency and the status as a pole in the multipolar world
Right.
order.
Obviously, the Global South is forging a new foreign policy vis-à-vis conflicts between the great powers. What is the role of Brazil, led by President Lula, in this new equation? What are the pressures on Brazil as a result of its non-alignment policy, especially when it comes to the Russia-Ukraine conflict?
Well, Lula has tried to arrive to a peaceful solution for this very sad conflict among broader nations, as a matter of fact. But I think recently Lula actually realized that the Western nations don't actually, well, the collective West, NATO-led alliance, isn't actually interested in a peaceful solution for this conflict. And also we need to understand that Russia also needs to actually win this war, as a matter of fact, because the way NATO betrayed Russia with the Minsk agreements, where they promised peace and actually used these years to weaponize and train Ukrainian soldiers, of course, Putin will have a very difficult time trusting the West again. And meanwhile, the European Union and the United States have pressured Brazil for us to sell vehicles, ammo, ammunition, weapons to Ukraine. And we have resisted very strongly against all this pressure. And they have actually tried to sabotage our weapons deals with other countries. For example, we have vehicles which have German parts, and because we refuse to give our vehicles, our armor to Ukraine, Germany has prohibited us from exporting these vehicles to other countries which are not involved in the war. At the time, it was the Philippines, as a matter of fact, which has nothing to do with it. So we have been put under a lot of pressure. I think at this specific problem, Lula has acted absolutely correctly by trying to find a peaceful solution, and obviously for us not to get involved by supporting Ukraine, especially because it would be a very big blow against BRICS, for example. If we began giving weapons and ammunition to Ukraine, it would be absurd. It would be absolutely against our best interests.
Right, Rafael Machado, Brazilian political scientist. Thank you very much, sir, for this erudite discussion. Always a pleasure to have you.
It was a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you very much. All the best wishes to all Mayadeen, to you, Zainab, and to the people of the Arab world.
Thank you very much, Rafael. إذن لعل التخلي عن مسار التطور الرأسمالي الغربي يتطلب شكلا مختلفا من العولمة وانفصالا عن المفاهيم الغربية للحداثة. إنه يتطلب عولمة قائمة على التعددية القطبية والتعاون والتآزر والتخطيط حيث تنجح أمريكا اللاتينية في إحراز تقدم نحو تكامل مربح لكل الأطراف. وتبرز اليوم الصين كقوة عالمية كبرى بات تطورها يغير العالم بكل معنى الكلمة، ولكن بناء مستقبل جديد متعدد الأقطاب يصون سيادة الدول النامية سيعتمد أيضاً على ما إذا كانت الشعوب ستستفيد من هذا الواقع الجيوسياسي المتغير لتوحيد وتوطيد وترسيخ مشروع البلد وباتريا جراندي أو الوطن العظيم الذي يضع مصالح الأغلبية في المقام الأول. هل بالفعل ستكون أمريكا اللاتينية هي مفتاح التحول نحو عالم متعدد الأقطاب يحفظ الهوية والروح والثقافات المتنوعة بتنوع شعوبها؟ من كل الميادين سلاما وتحية، في مان الله.